The Healthcare Employers Council has begun its work on the Labor Planning and Forecasting Project. This project is an effort to manage the West Michigan healthcare talent supply chain by forecasting the demand for the few occupations that make up 80% of the workforce and developing and executing strategies to meet those demands. In this video, we will discuss the labor planning side of this project. The labor planning end focuses on developing and executing strategies to manage the West Michigan talent supply chain. So where the forecasting side of the project is focused around understanding employer demand and market conditions, the labor planning end is centered around taking action in responding to employer demands. In the introduction of the slideshow, we discussed the reports that concluded labor shortages will occur in the U.S. if no action is taken. If stakeholders in the West Michigan talent supply chain are going to prevent these shortages, they will need to consider a number of strategies. We decided to speak with educators regarding what they believe should be done to help meet employer demand for healthcare workers. Their response was that we should investigate ways by which we could connect workers to the next level of occupation. Furthermore, they suggested determining ways to break down barriers to education, including barriers such as time, money, and risk. We took this advice and began examining the healthcare occupations. Within healthcare, there are many careers that could fall into natural career ladders. These ladders would allow a worker to progress from a lower level occupation to a higher level occupation through education. But these ladders don't exist. Here you see several occupations laid out according to years of education required. Those occupations that are within similar or the same field of study have been colored the same. You would expect to see a natural progression from the lower jobs to the next occupation. However, instead of having a natural flow within the healthcare industry where one can move from a lower occupation to the next, the industry has isolated occupations. To move from one occupation to the next, one must start over in one's educational track. Perhaps the most glaring example is that of the physician's assistant and the physician. Consider the case of a student who spends 4 years getting his bachelor's degree and then spends 2 more years being trained as a physician's assistant. As a physician's assistant, he is able to function almost independently with minimal supervision by a physician. But if he wants to go on to become a physician, none of what he learned previously will affect his time in medical school. The 2 years of PA education and the time spent working mean nothing. He will have to start over and go through 4 complete years of medical school. On the flip side, consider a medical student taking her medical examination. Should she fail to pass her exams, which she has a 15 to 20% chance of doing so, she has just spent 4 years in undergrad and 4 years in medical school and still has no employable skill. Having failed the exam to become a doctor, she has nothing to fall back on. She cannot go and practice as a physician's assistant. She can't go and work as a nurse or a medical assistant or even a certified nurse's aide, even though the certified nurse's aide occupation only requires 3 weeks of training. Clearly there is something wrong with this picture. This is the case in most healthcare occupations. The exception occurs in the nursing track, though even this is not universal. Consider the nursing program at Montcalm Community College. Those in the program have a unique opportunity. Within 1 semester, they have learned enough basic nursing care to take a licensing exam to become a certified nurse's aide. After 1 year of classes, they can take a licensing exam to become a licensed practical nurse. After 2 years, they have completed the associate's degree in nursing program and can work as a registered nurse. At this point, they have the opportunity to continue their education at Ferris State University, where they can complete their bachelor's in nursing degree. This is the perfect example of a career ladder. It is a value-added model in which students are training in employable skills that they can use upon reaching each milestone. This reduces risk since students who don't complete the entire program still walk away with the training and certification they received at the last completed milestone. Furthermore, this decreases the amount of students who are work in progress, resulting in immediate workforce engagement. This means that instead of waiting 2, 4, 6, or even 8 years before a student is considered to be employable in the healthcare field, they can start working within 1 semester and move up as they acquire new training. We believe that this nursing model, which demonstrates a very clear career ladder, is the future of healthcare education. We want to see this model applied and adapted on a regional level in order to meet the employer demands for healthcare workers. But we don't want to stop there. While we like the nursing track model and wish to see it adapted universally, there is a problem with it. it does not allow for lateral movement, meaning one cannot change career tracks without starting over. Let me put this in context. Students who major in business operations have their degree in business operations. However, at any time, they may go and seek a marketing position with little or no extra training required. This is not the case in healthcare. Instead of being able to move laterally to a different occupation, one must restart their education and completely retrain if one should want to move laterally. This is surprising considering the similarities between many healthcare occupations. Let's use information from the O-Net to compare the personal care assistant occupation with the home health aide occupation. Here you see a display of the different knowledge clusters defined by the O-Net for these two occupations. The ones in green belong to the personal care assistant exclusively. The ones in purple belong to the home health aide occupation exclusively. The ones in blue are shared by them. As you can see, most of the knowledge clusters, or the topics that they study, are the same. Here we've done the same comparison using skills clusters. As you can see, most of the skills clusters are shared between the two occupations. Finally, we have the abilities clusters. Once again, you see that most of the abilities are shared between the two occupations. Now, some of them you may say, well, near vision, you either have that or you don't. But things such as oral expression, oral comprehension, problem solving, and speech clarity, these are all things that you would find being taught within an educational setting. If there is so much shared content, why is it not easy to move laterally within the field? One reason is because of the traditional education model that awards credit to an individual in lump sums called courses. Instead of awarding credit based on competencies acquired as they are acquired, students are only recognized for earning them after completing an entire class, a course, or program. There's a lot of repetition that goes on because of this. There's low customization, there's many issues with transferability, and there's risk involved. There's a lot of problems with this model. However, it's not the only model that's out there. Take, for example, the emerging online school called Khan Academy, which has developed a new education model. You can visit www.khanacademy.com for more information. They take courses and break them into modules. Each module is a topic that is covered within 20 minutes by video lecture. A student watches these videos at home and then comes to class to work on coursework. A student is not allowed to advance to the next topic without demonstrating mastery over it. This means they must answer 10 questions correctly in a row before advancing. This is called flipping the class. Students are able to go at their own pace and choose which topics they want to learn. This allows them to follow a path on the flowchart in any direction so long as they have learned the necessary prerequisites. Upon completing enough modules, a student is tested on all the content within a unit, units, or course as a way of doing a unit test, midterm, or final exam. There are a number of things that can be gleaned from this model. However, the focus issue here is that students are being awarded credit for learning topics immediately upon mastery. As soon as they have mastered a topic, they won't have to relearn it. Here is an example. Suppose a student completes coursework up through several levels of algebra before going on to study statistics. The content map the student completed while studying algebra would have included certain topics such as the mean, median, and mode. Since these topics have already been mastered and accounted for, the student can skip this content when studying statistics. So we asked the question of what would happen if we applied this concept to healthcare occupations. What would happen if we mapped out a PCA track based on knowledge, skills, and abilities? Above is what such a map could look like. This is not an actual map, but just a concept design. Then, after mapping one occupation, we could map another. Here is what a home health aide occupation might look like. After mapping both, we could lay them over top of each other. This would enable us to see how much content between the two occupations is shared and what modules a worker in one occupation would need to take in order to move into another occupation. So let's take a closer look at the personal care assistant and the home health aide occupations. According to the O-Net, there were 32 knowledge, skills, and ability clusters for the personal care assistant, and there were 25 clusters for the home health aide. But 22 of those clusters were shared by both occupations. This means that if you were a competent home health aide and wanted to become a personal care assistant, you'd only have to learn 10 of the 32 clusters to become a personal care assistant. That's equivalent to about 31% of the course material. So what does this mean practically? Well, a CNA course within the West Michigan region takes about 3 weeks to complete, along with the cost of $700 plus books and supplies. If we were to use a KSA model of education and were working with a home health aide who is competent in their occupation, instead of having them go through an entire CNA course, they could expect to need to only cover 31% of the traditional course content. This would mean that they would only need to go through 1 week of class. They would only need to spend $230 plus books and supplies. This would save them $470. In addition, they could start working 2 weeks earlier. This would earn them $600. To the individual, this would net back to them $1,070. As you can see, there are some very real consumer benefits to switching to this sort of model. If we continued to build the model, there would be occupational tracks with related occupations connected at each level by similar knowledge, skills, and abilities. Potentially, someone with a bachelor's of science in nursing who wanted to move into occupational therapy would not have to start all over in their training. Instead, they could focus on learning the course content of the OT track that wasn't covered in their nursing program. In time, all occupations could be mapped so that one would be able to see the educational match between any two occupations. This model comes with many benefits for employers. It allows for a more flexible workforce. Instead of having certain boards dictate to an employer what training workers needed to go through in order to be qualified to work, employers could hire talent engineers to study a position's processes and job functions and build a KSA talent model around that position. Furthermore, cross-functional groups would be enabled and encouraged. There could be physical therapists moving into the nursing track, bringing their knowledge and expertise with them. This would allow for a more open and diverse healthcare setting. Additionally, incumbents could have a way out of a position they hate. Instead of having to go back and start all over, something not everyone can afford to do financially or time-wise, they could examine the gamut of occupations, determine a compatible occupation that would be a better fit for them, and begin taking a few courses over time to help them move over into that new track. Downsizing alternatives would also be available under this new model. One of the best applications of the system works in a manufacturing setting. Imagine you own a company that is about to go belly up. Pretty soon you'll need to shut the doors. However, there is a way out. You could easily convert the company over to produce a new product. However, you don't have the right workforce to make such an operation functional. If your local education institution was operating under a KSA model, there would be a solution. The educator would have mapped your current workforce occupations with the occupations you needed. You could instantly put together curriculum to transition your workforce into their new occupations. Within a very short period of time, the factory that was about to go under would be up and running. No workers would be fired, and no unemployment would be paid. These are just a few of the examples of the applications that could be made by this new KSA model. Many of you may be wondering, so what next? Our current strategy is as follows. We want to encourage education institutions to adopt career ladders within their own organizations and with partner organizations. Montcalm and Ferris have a great model. We want to duplicate it and adapt it out to the graduate degree level. Simultaneously, we want to work to begin mapping out the lower occupations by knowledge, skills, and abilities. As we map one, we'll add another and expand out from there. It will be like building a lattice. Get the vertical beams in place and fill in the horizontal slats. There are a number of groups we need to be involved for this effort to move forward. First, there needs to be significant employer leadership. Second, we are looking to find some partnering educational institutions. Third, we want to seek some grant money to help bring legitimacy to this project. Fourth, after we have the first three in place, we'll seek to have policymakers, such as lawmakers and accreditation boards, observe the work and consider allowing the expansion of this model. Thanks for taking the time to take a look at the work we're doing with the Healthcare Employer Council's Labor Planning and Forecasting Project. If you or anyone you know would like to receive more information or participate in this project, please contact Hans Palma at afh.org.